Can a simple front suspension completely change Ferrari's destiny in the new era of Formula One? It all started with a seemingly technical discussion, almost invisible to the casual viewer. In mid-2024, in one of the multiple sessions of the FIA Technical Committee, the debate on the limit of mechanical intervention allowed in the front suspensions was reopened. For years, the FIA had maintained a conservative stance, avoiding any system that could generate indirect aerodynamic changes through suspension-induced chassis movement. But the context of the new 2026 regulations required a reassessment. The cars of 2026 will need to adapt to a completely different technical profile. Less dependence on the combustion engine, a proportion of recovered energy that will reach 50%, and most relevant for this case, a general reduction in downforce due to limitations in the design of the diffusers and the flat bottom. This reduction will force all teams to look for new ways to generate grip, especially at the front of the car. And that is where Ferrari found its opportunity. Ferrari had been quietly promoting a regulatory framework for months that would allow greater freedom in suspension geometry. The interesting thing is not that Ferrari asked for something radical, but that it proposed it wrapped in terms of safety, mechanical efficiency, and compatibility with the new energy limits of the regulations. The argument was clear. Allowing a front suspension with a greater degree of kinematic freedom would help reduce tire wear, optimize load transfer, and facilitate the adaptation of the car to different driving phases without the need for prohibited active elements. What the FIA ended up approving, with carefully worded nuances, was a legal reinterpretation of the dynamic behavior of the front suspension. All arms and anchor points were no longer required to be rigid and static in their operating parameters. Under certain limits, it was accepted that the materials used could have controlled deformation properties. This didn't just open a window. It literally allowed us to redesign the basis on which a Formula One car is built. And Ferrari was clear about it. It was not about adapting the car to the new regulations. His approach was different. It was to build the car to dominate it. Since 2023, a small group within the Scuderia led by engineers displaced from the vehicle dynamics area had been simulating a completely new front architecture. One that required exactly the type of regulation that was approved in 2024. This was not a fluke. It was a long-term strategic maneuver. The approval of this concept by the FIA was seen by some teams as a simple technical detail. But for Ferrari it was a MasterCard. While others analyzed the regulations from the perspective of limitations, they did so from the hidden potential. The SF26 would not be just another single-seater. It would be the first in a new generation of cars that interpret the rules not from the surface, but from the space in between where the regulations have not yet been tested. And the most disturbing thing for his rivals is that all this was done within the legal framework. Ferrari did not ask for privileges. He did not hide his proposal. He simply understood emptiness before anyone else. And in a sport where milliseconds are worth millions, understanding before everyone else is a way to win long before the traffic lights go out. The key to the SF26 is not simply that it incorporates a new front suspension. It has been conceived as a machine built from that suspension to the rest of the car. It is the starting point of all its structural, aerodynamic, and dynamic design. It's not about adapting a new component to an existing chassis, but rather creating a chassis that can only work with that suspension. And that approach changes everything. The heart of the concept is based on a bold premise. The front suspension of the SF26 is not only designed to manage the mechanical behavior of the car on the asphalt, but to modulate the aerodynamic behavior of the car in real time without requiring active systems. How is this possible? The answer lies in the dynamic geometry and new generation materials used by Ferrari, especially in the elements of the upper suspension arms. Traditionally, the front suspension in F1 fulfills two basic functions: keeping the wheels in optimal contact with the ground and supporting the load of the chassis. However, with the arrival of the 2026 regulations, where cars will see their downforce reduced due to limitations on the flat bottom and the elimination of certain passive aerodynamic tricks, the efficiency of the front axle becomes even more critical. And Ferrari is going further. Its new suspension subtly modifies the height of the car's nose, the angle of attack of the arms, and the lateral inclination of the chassis depending on the lateral and longitudinal effort during driving. This means, for example, that when braking hard, the car not only lowers the front part as is common, but this lowering occurs in a range kinematically studied to open a much more favorable air window towards the side channels and the diffuser. And when cornering, the system allows a lateral inclination that keeps the angle of attack of the flow constant under the flat bottom. That is, the negative effect of rolling is reduced and the ground effect is preserved even in conditions where other cars partially lose it. To achieve this, Ferrari has used an inverted pushrod suspension configuration with flexible dual-core carbon arms, a rigid outer layer to support the load and an inner layer of elastomeric material with carefully calibrated viscoelastic properties. This design allows for intentional microdeformations that are invisible to the naked eye but that alter the behavior of the airflow under the car. In aerodynamic terms, it's like having a front wing that changes shape without the need for servos or hydraulics. Everything happens by structural design, by mechanical resonance, by anticipation of the stresses that the car receives at each point of the circuit. This system does not violate any regulations because there are no moving parts powered by the pilot or actuators. The car simply breathes with the circuit. And that, in Formula One, is a major advantage. But the real genius is that Ferrari didn't design it as an isolated solution. The entire aerodynamic package of the SF26 has been adapted to work in sync with this suspension. The side pods, for example, are narrower and set further back, creating a clearer area to channel air from the front axle into the side channels. The flat bottom has a progressive curvature that responds better when the nose is low and the chassis inclined, generating more suction without adding resistance on a straight line. And the rear wing has been retuned to complement this new dynamic behavior of the front axle, creating a completely new load balance. This entire system offers multiple simultaneous benefits. It not only improves aerodynamic efficiency when cornering, but also reduces drag on the straight. It improves the stability of the car during braking and allows better thermal management of the front tires by keeping them in their optimal window for longer. Additionally, it offers the driver a more linear feel of grip, which could reduce errors and improve pace over long stints. It is a system that requires confidence, precision, and, above all, courage to implement. But Ferrari has decided that it is no longer enough to simply be in the fight. Now they want to control the pace of that fight. And with this suspension, the SF26 could become the car that not only responds to the 2026 regulation, but redefines it from its own front axle. The implications of this new system at Ferrari go far beyond a simple technical advance. They are projected like a shock to the strategic board of the entire grid. Because what Ferrari has done with the SF26 is not just optimizing one area of the car. It is breaking the classic development pattern based on the evolution of the previous year, and imposing a new technical standard that forces the rest of the teams to rewrite their own concepts from scratch. And in a sport where every millimeter of advantage costs millions of euros and months of work, starting from scratch is a nightmare. Ferrari, by bringing forward its 2026 work from mid-2024, has gained critical time that no wind tunnel or simulator can replace. He has invested in exploring gray areas of the rules while others were still competing for points in 2025. And now, with that knowledge in hand, he can set the pace for a new era. This creates a double problem for the other teams. On the one hand, the obligation to rethink its conceptual platforms for 2026, which were already advanced. Many of these developments could now be obsolete if they do not consider an architecture similar to that of the SF26. On the other hand, the enormous risk of trying to copy a system without understanding its complete integration. Because what Ferrari has created is not a part that can be adapted, but a system that requires the entire car to be designed around it. So now it's your turn. Do you think that Ferrari has got it right with this technical revolution, or that they have taken too much risk? Do you think that this suspension of the SF26 could mark the Scuderia's return to the top of the championship, or will it simply be another technical curiosity that fails to materialize into real results? Leave me your opinion in the comments what you think about all this.